fisherman who goes by a boat to catch fish, and he casts the net in the ocean waters and holds it there for the fish to be caught. Now, when does the net get folded back and taken back into the boat? It doesn't depend on the net. It doesn't depend on even the fish which are caught and struggling inside there to get out. It all depends on the fisherman who cast the net to take it back. So the Brahman is like that fisherman. He pulls it back. Whatever we have right now is this manifestation. A person doing something is totally irrelevant. What a person does or does not do has no relation at all to any of these things. Even Shankaracharya says it has to happen tat prasadat, by the grace of it. Even he could not finally say how or why or when it happens. At the most, what is in the hands of a person who thinks that he or she is still separate is to be aware of this teaching and prepare oneself to be in that readiness, that mutation for the tipping over to happen. So for anyone, what can be done in terms of some practical doing, which is not really a doing, is to be in readiness. That means willfully not to erect some walls of obstruction. Let the light beam in. Don't shut your walls and keep the doors all closed. So that's all what we can do. So what is this really happening actually? There's really nothing is happening, because everything that is there is Brahman already.
Right.
So it's not anything that you are becoming in terms of something which was not there. You are already it. Only thing is some dust is getting removed.
Right.
Yeah, you see, intellectually we have been thinking that I am a separate individual. I am here and the world is all external to me. That is the usual concept in which we function. The whole transactional world goes on from morning to evening or even the 24 hours, that there is a world outside and I have a limited body here which I am responsible to feed and to maintain it, to look after its health and so on. And there is a world outside there with which I interact. This is the normal concept of our intellect. Instead of this concept, the other concept that I am everything, I am Brahman myself, is the new way, if you can say that way, is that reorientation. So what is really happening is not that we are acquiring something new or changing ourselves to be something that we were not so far. We are only removing those little curtains, the veils we have built, so that the light shines by itself. So another comparison given here is, suppose there is a lamp and you put a cover of an earthen pot over it. Obviously the light cannot shine everywhere. Only when the pot is broken or the pot is removed, you don't have to do anything else. The light automatically shines. So it's not that light is lighted later on or ignited later on. The light has been there. Only a will has been obstructing it. So it's a question of removal of the veil. Even listening to this message is something like putting your head in the tiger's mouth. When once the message is heard, is like on a conveyor belt. You can't do anything at all. It happens. It has to happen. That
Right.
means the sense of separation has come with Brahman himself casting the net out, and the sense of separation is getting dissolved with the net being pulled back. So who is doing it? Brahman is doing it, both in terms of casting the net and taking it back. And who is that Brahman? Is none other than you yourself.
Right.
So like a dream, when you sleep, in your sleep, without any of your effort, you begin dreaming.
Right.
Do you consciously end your dream?
No.
In a matter of, as a matter of fact, there is no other entity which is coming and telling you to close your dream and wake up. You yourself come out of the dream. But there is no special doing for that to awaken from the dream. Nobody else is involved there. You yourself dream, you yourself end the dream. And both actions go on effortlessly. You have effort in terms of arranging a bed, a comfortable meal, a nice atmosphere to sleep. These are all little enabling factors. But even with all those things granted, you cannot say, I'll switch on my dream at 12 o'clock in the night or 5 minutes past 2 o'clock in the night. You don't do like that. The dream, when it comes, it comes.
Right.
It's not really in the control of a particular person there.
Right.
And similarly, when the dream ends also, unless you are woken up by some nightmare or by external noises, that's a different thing. But in this metaphor we are speaking about, the dream ends by itself. And all this is happening in your own mind. That means your mind started to craft a dream, and your mind closes the dream. Likewise, you yourself as Brahman have intentionally, purposefully became something different than Brahman. That means you started to forget your own infiniteness. And as Brahman again, you recollect back your infiniteness. So just like the mind weaves the dream and closes the dream, and the mind is yours only. Like that, you as Brahman cast the net in the wakeful state and this world that we see, and you close it back yourself. So it's not a question of doing. The grace, that means Brahman himself or herself or himself, said enough is enough, getting back. The analogy again given here is something like what gives the picture to the light when that beam of light is projected onto a screen. You interpose a little bit of a film. So whatever is there on the film, even though it's just white light that passes through, when the film is interposed in between, instead of that white beam of light that is coming out of the projector arc lamp, you see pictures, colorful things, maybe flowers, maybe a landscape, maybe a river, maybe a human profile. So what decides the picture is the film. That means the light is the same.
Mhm.
What appears as the various objects on the screen, that is also only light, nothing else. But the variety of the pictures or the objects are governed by what sort of filter we are using, the film. The role of the film in our life is the mind. So the mind in this evolution of the entire biological life, or whatever you may call, has stored several experiences. And these experiences are stored like little traces or impressions. So that accumulated impressions, they function as that film to project whatever that you see. So each individual sees his or her own world. Even though we think all of us are seeing one common world, in fact, it is not that all of us are seeing one world. Each one is seeing his or her own world. So if there are 7 billion people in the world today, it's not one world being looked at by 7 billion people.
Right.
It's actually 7 billion worlds being looked at by one consciousness through 7 billion film frames. It all depends upon the film. And where has the film come from? The film itself is within Brahman. It has again not come from outside. So there the metaphor fails. Here we have got light from the projector or clamp, and a film which is an external material, and a third entity screen outside there. But in Advaita, all these things are within Brahman only. So the film is a little part of Brahman which has had some vibrations in the past. Those traces of vibrations got recorded there, and Brahman himself or itself is looking through those past vibrations.
Right.
So, and these vibrations are happening in 7 billion places. So we have 7 billion people here. Again, these are little models to help each individual seeker to find the best model that is most convenient for oneself. It's not that every model will suit everybody's mind. In this Ekajivavada, everything is taken as it's my projection only and there is nobody else.
Right.
Even if you say my children are there and they are talking to you, it's all happening as part of your own projection. Even if I am sitting here now and talking, it's not that there is an object or an entity called Ramesam who is speaking to you. It's your own projection.
Right.
It is speaking back to you. And in fact, it is consciousness only which is listening at your end. It is consciousness only which appears to be speaking elsewhere. Because there is no other entity which has the capacity to utter even a single sound.
Right.
The sentience is the characteristic, the knowingness, the capability of Brahman. See, that's a very, very intense sort of a prakriya exercise. And unless a seeker is fairly in deep understanding of Vedanta, they won't subscribe to this. Even so-called people who read many Upanishads and all that, they turn away from this Ekajivavada. So I would say that's a great gift. In fact, you know, even amongst the highly bhakti-oriented people, the devotional people, there are mantras which say something like this: you have to be a Vishnu to really worship a Vishnu. In fact, that is said by Prahalada in Bhagavata. And the same thing comes in Yoga Vasishtha also. So if you think there is a Vishnu there, somewhere there on the pedestal, and I am here as a little worshipper, that sort of worship is totally second rate, gauna, as they say. So a true worshipper is one where he or she becomes one with that God he is worshipping. Similarly, there is another place, I forget the source, where it says if you have to be a worshipper of Shiva, you have to be yourself first a Shiva. So a Shiva can only worship a Shiva. You see the oneness there. So you alone are there. Doesn't matter at that stage whether you think yourself to be a nameless entity or whether you think yourself to be Vishnu or Shiva. What name you give, it doesn't matter. You and the worshipped, the worshipper and the worshipped become one. The subject and object become one. The descriptors, terms like being generous or actual content of what has happened, $10 versus $50, or these values. If you keep them all away, the essence of your question boils down to one thing. A particular thought has occurred to you. See, a thought may be give $10. The thought could be give $50. The thought could be go somewhere else or don't do this. Irrespective of what that content of the thought is, even simple thing like let me have a cup of tea. No, not tea. Let me have only coffee. Whatever that thought is. So basically, these are all thoughts. So your question now boils down in a generalized condition. What is the source of the thought? Where from a thought originates? Whether it is action of paying the money or feeling compassion or feeling anger or taking a decision, they're all ultimately bits and pieces of thoughts. So what is the source of a thought? Now, you just observe your own thought. Whatever thought is occurring to you right now, the thought starts and there is an end also to the thought. And you can observe. Don't pay any attention to the content of the thought, but you see the general structure and texture of the thought. The structure is, it has a starting point, little span, and it dissolves. Then another thought comes, and you are observing all this. So it is not a thought observing the thought. There is an awareness which is aware of the thought. So the thought is an object, like a tree, like the body here, or like the computer in front. These are all inert objects. Let us call them inert only for the convenience of our explanation here. In fact, the final position of Advaita is there is nothing like inert. But we'll come to that later. So let us, for the moment, distinguish these objects from the perceiver of objects. That means the subject or the seer and what is seen. Everything that is perceived, that means experienced, whether by vision or by hearing or by touch, whatever sense we use, when we experience a thing, that becomes a percept, an object. So if you are aware of a thought, even the thought is generically an object only. Okay? So now you have observed the thought as an object, starting at a point and ending, and there is a little, very, a little sliver of a gap, and the next thought comes in. you are observing that ending and the beginning of the next, the ending of the first thought and the beginning of the next thought. So there is obviously a little gap there. You are observing the gap also. Even though the thought is arising and ending, you as an observer who is aware of these objects, thoughts or whatever it is, you are never absent anytime.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So there is a little gap in the thought, but as an observer, you are never absent. There is no gap at all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where from this thought is arising? Is it coming from somewhere outside? You just observe your own thought. Where has it originated from? When it ends, it is dissolving back into the same thing where from it is coming.
Right. Just
It is not going anywhere. You don't see an exit door marked anywhere, nor an entrance door.
Right.
So from wherever it is raising up and falling back. And what is that? That is that gap which you are aware of. So the gap itself is rising, taking the form of a wave, which you call as a thought, and dissolving back into the gap. But again, little more close observation. What exactly is that gap? What is there? You say as nothing is there, but that nothingness of the gap is a word you're using to compare it to something being present when that nothingness was not there.
Mm-hmm.
You see the logic of it?
Right.
The nothingness is a name you are giving vis-a-vis something else. Otherwise, you would not have had that word nothingness.
Right.
And
So,
what is the substance of that nothingness? That's what your awareness is. So the awareness itself is giving rise to this thought and taking it back into itself. So whether it is a thought or a tree or a sound or a person, it is your awareness which is taking that shape at that moment and dissolving back. So thoughts are nothing but Brahman itself. Brahman at that point, at that moment, has taken that shape. And again, does Brahman occur only in the form of that thought? You see, at that moment when you are perceiving the thought, there are so many things around. They have not disappeared. Only thing is your attention. You have focused your beam of light onto a little spotlight there. Otherwise, the whole entire universe is there. So from moment to moment, this Brahman is changing that shape, not only as that particular thought, but with all objects that are there. See, you bring in the time factor because you have stored in your memory a scene of the past, and from memory, you try to compare it now, and what is now looks to be different, so you call it a change, and the change is described in terms of time. Time more like a little measure, a bookkeeper, as I think this physicist John Wheeler said it. Time is nothing but a bookkeeper of change. So that is how you bring in time, otherwise time itself is not there if you see everything moment by moment. So moment by moment, Brahman is taking a shape, a form into all that is appearing. So it is Brahman itself appearing as the thought, not only thought, all other things at that moment. And Brahman itself is dissolving back. All these are subsequent story buildings. What has happened, happened just as an event. The moment you ask a question why, you are expecting some causation. See, mechanism is also an explanation of a process of a cause becoming an effect. See, whether you call it a process, a mechanism, or a method, or a sequence of events, these are all the words you use to explain the change from position A to position B. Position A may be milk, position B may be the yogurt. So the process is the one which converts them, right? So you have now this thought of having paid extra. Mind always exists in time. In fact, time and mind are synonymous. Mind, in effect, is nothing but the thought you have at the moment. Of course, there are other definitions from the mind, but let us now consider this particular aspect only. The current thought that occurs to you is the mind. There is no container, a vessel in which mind, in which all thoughts sit like in a fruit bowl. Mind is not a fruit bowl. It's not a vessel. It's not a flower vase. There's nothing like a mind at all. The current thought is the mind. So even if a series of thoughts come, it's not that this group of thoughts make the mind. In fact, you cannot hold any thought stationary. The thought is always in movement. So you can't keep two thoughts together. It's impossible because you can't capture it. The thought is always in movement. So movement is mind. So whether you call it time, thought, movement, they're all mind only essentially. And the difference between Brahman and mind is also that whatever is stationary, absolutely still, that is Brahman. And whatever moves is the mind. So it is Brahman in movement becomes mind. Mind, still in this metaphor, is Brahman. So one comparison that sage Vasishtha gives is air. You cannot even feel it. That's like Brahman. When it blows like a wind, the breeze, and the feel of touch makes you feel the presence of air then. That is like mind. And he says again one more thing immediately. There is no movement separate from mind. So movement itself is mind, and movement means time. Time is mind, and mind is nothing but thought. So at every moment as things move, there is a new configuration coming up. But with the aid of memory, you bring in the factor of time. Otherwise, Brahman is not moving at all. If you don't keep a history of all the events and arrange them in a sequential fashion, there is no time at all. Each is a fresh moment. Each is a fresh scenario. Each is a fresh form. But because mind is more concerned with the survival of the body, it wants to relate to time and to a past and a projected future. Whether you want to make some money or prepare some food or store some food, save something for a later day, you require memory. for the function of the body. Mind is essentially an extension like the heart or the kidneys or the brain. It is just an organ which is supposed to take care of the body as an organism. It has no other function than that. But unfortunately, we identify ourselves with mind and the thought process that happen there. Thought processes are nothing but constant signals received from the environment for the upkeep, protection, and safety of the body organism. So everything that is taking a form has also this inherent quality of protecting that form, at least to some extent, for some period of time. So mind is a useful organ for that purpose, and it is built only for that limited purpose. But we use it for abstract thinking, bring in new concepts that are not there, and then we start working out why is this happening. So this why and causation phenomena relating a particular cause to an effect is the survival mechanism which appears as the characteristic of the mind, and it has no purpose beyond the upkeep of the body organism by the mind. So as far as Brahman is concerned, the various forms it takes from moment to moment, it is not time dependent at all. When there is no time, there is no question of even why, because there's nothing which is getting converted into point A to point B. Everything is a fresh thing occurring all by itself. It is very unconvincing to the mind because mind is habituated to think in terms of cause-effect relationships. So it is something mind cannot accept or get convinced. So there is really no answer for many of these why questions. The particular geometric shape or size of any particular shape there, a hill or a valley or a little sinkhole, whatever is there forming, it has not originated and sustained all by itself. The shape, size, everything is decided by the totality of the entire universe. So taking a little part of it and asking questions and relating them to a specific single cause or handful of causes cannot really explain it. So in order to explain this, why this body has taken that particular form of thought or something like that, you have to take the entire universe into consideration and all the thoughts that have occurred. And it's not possible for the puny little mind of ours. We can't capture it. Even with regard to the cup of tea that you may take, the entire universe is involved. Think of it. When you light a stove, where from the stove has come? You go into little part of each of those instruments you use. Even the nut. If the nut has to be designed, so many thought processes have gone into that design. Process means there are people behind. And the material, the iron in it, the oxygen in it, oxides if they are there, or the other metals, hydrogen as component, they all came from the beginning of the universe itself. Some of the carbon atoms in your own body, they are perhaps sitting for billions of years. In fact, the carbon atom in your body might have been sitting in Krishna's body. We never know. Or it could have come from the next door's dog as it breathed out. At no single point any individual decisions are there. Saying that the entire universe is involved doesn't mean that the individual becomes a doormat. Even to say no at times is saying yes in the universe, in the context of the totality of the universe. Say a child goes to the school, he does very badly there, not able to adjust with his other colleagues, students. Do we leave him then just like that? Or do I, as a parent, guide him? The whole question then comes from a look at what exactly is the source for your own action. Am I reacting simply to project my own views, my own frustrations, my own prejudices as a limited individual? Or am I taking a holistic view, a universal view on talking? See, at one level, you can take a totally detached philosophical attitude of non-interference and let your children go in the way that happens. But there is also a responsibility, as you said correctly, to see that their body-mind mechanisms are properly sustained. In the animal life, even as little tiny tots, as soon as they are born, almost in many cases, they can get up, walk away from the parents. But in the human beings, it's not like that. The child is so much dependent on the parents for so many things. In fact, that is the reason why biologically it is said that we have a higher brain capacity. That means in the evolution itself, it so happened that in order to sustain a larger brain, the offsprings are so designed to be dependent on the parents, unlike in the animal world, where the offsprings don't have to depend on the parents for too long a period. So because the human design itself is like that, that you have as a parent responsibility to formulate their own mental and body makeup so that they sustain themselves. So you cannot totally leave them to, uh, you know, to just aid like that. So you have a responsibility. But then at the same time, you do not insist and try to dictate your decisions. You don't hector to them.
Right.
You describe various scenarios, and whatever happens, you take with that equal love and compassion. You don't either play a victim or hold them as a culprit of getting some result which is not wanted. So you give the picture to them, and the decisions will be happening as anyway they have to happen. So that means there are no formulae by which you act. Each situation is highly contextual and you play by the ear. You offer the correct guidance, and present the possible potential scenarios. You don't look for a particular result. You do whatever is required at that moment. So at this moment, with all your compassion and love, you're obligated to give necessary guidance.
Right.
And perhaps you will take all steps towards that. If little punishment has to be given by you, by disallowing certain privileges, you may even do that. The main point is, it's not trying to indirectly achieve your goals and your objectives which you have failed onto the children.
Right.
If you are doing it out of your own compassion for them, out of your love for them, I would even say that it is your bounden responsibility. You can't shirk away from the immediate obligations. Even Sage Vasishtha says, if you have a family and responsibility, fulfilling those responsibilities is primary need.
Right.
See, this Advaita will be acting there, will be governing your thinking, but total renunciation, sannyasa is required. That's why when Shankara says it many times, that sannyas is the real facilitating ground, the ashram, in which the real tipping happens.
Mm-hmm.
So we may develop any level of relinquishment, renouncing, and all that, but the perfect jnani in the seventh step, that means total brahmanista, sthita prajna, would be possible only as a sannyas, only in the ashram of sannyas. So as long as you're a householder, doing the duty of the householder is also very much necessary. We can't escape. We can't run away from it. I agree. See, the whole pull, if it is so much there, at one point you will be unconcerned with anything that is happening around. Automatically things happen. And the whole universe is your children then. Let that not be forced on you by pretension. See, many people justify, several actions on this veneer of Advaita. On a thin layer of Advaita, they give a covering and say anything anyway will happen. What can I do? As an individual, I have no role. But this is only a half understanding of the totality of the teaching, what Advaita says. See, as an individual, as a separate entity, you have certain functions to perform. Even though you are in the totality of everything that is there, this totality has arisen in the form of that little separate individual. The little separate individual is not any extraneous foreign element. It's not alien to the totality. So that individual element is also vested with certain actions, right by the design of Brahman itself. See, what is said is like this. When the creation happens, with the first thought of creation, a series of rules and regulations of that creation also get settled. They are called as niyati. The sum totality of the rules and regulations has also the name Ishvara. Ishvara is the first one that comes in creation, and then the individual objects come in the creation. So the rules and regulations for the individuals to act in a particular creation are already there, and you can't shirk from them. And you can also view it as a little testing ground for your own whole life seems to be engineered in that way that we face these impediments and obstacles to test ourselves. Everything happens in awareness. What does it mean? You are aware of things, right? So whatever you observe, that is observed. That means you are aware of it. If there is no awareness of it at all, it's as good as not being there. If you are not aware of something, it's not there at all.
Right.
When day and night are happening in awareness. Even that movement of clock, time, everything is happening in awareness.
Okay.
So awareness is not moving really. So you, as awareness, have not moved anywhere.
Right.
The body appears to move. The car appears to move. Suddenly you think or you travel to London.
Right.
So it's not that you have moved or awareness has moved. Awareness has not moved anywhere at all.
Right.
Okay, one classic example that Vedanta gives is, suppose you have a pot at place A,
Mm-hmm.
and there is space outside the pot and the space inside the pot, right?
Right.
Now the pot is moved from place A to place B.
Okay.
Has the space within the pot space, has it moved?
No.
The totality of the space is there always.
Right.
Only the form of the pot moves from place A to place B.
Right.
Space itself has not moved. It looks as if space has moved inside the pot, as if the space is sitting inside the pot, stationary there, and then as if you are moving this pot space also. It's not like that. I'm talking about an open pot, not a hermetically sealed pot.
Right. Okay.
So the space is all continuous, and space itself is not moving. The pot is moving. So awareness is like that space. That's why awareness or consciousness or Brahman, the nearest comparison we can give is space-like. You as awareness not moving, body mind, it is moving. Awareness is observing the body moving.
Okay.
So you already detach yourself from your own body and mind.